Well, good morning, everybody. I'm sure you were expecting to hear Matt this morning, but Matt and I swapped the middle of this week just due to travel for the both of us. And so you got me back to back at the start of the week. Yesterday, I was talking about the very strong winds that we expected to come through the plains here. And you can see the pair of lows that we're dealing with right now. We have the one that is exiting. This is actually the low that over the weekend delivered all of that much needed rainfall into this section of the country, including some of the strong to severe storms to the south. We now have the low that's following it. That's going to go over the Great Lakes today and tomorrow and spread in more rain into the northeast as well. And this is also the one behind or around which we had the really strong pressure gradient driving the winds yesterday. And I had mentioned something in the video yesterday, and I appreciate those of you that sent me an email with pictures, but I was hoping and thinking we were going to be able to get what we call a Chinook cloud or Chinook wall. I actually don't know the official name. I've just seen one, and I want to show you the picture of it. This is what it looked like. So the Rocky Mountains are under this, and this cloud is absolutely enormous. I actually don't know how tall it is, but I was near Boulder, Colorado, when I took this picture several years ago. And what's amazing is this cloud just lives here all day in these Chinook wind events. And the winds can get very, very strong. It doesn't come off the mountains. It doesn't roll toward you. It just stays there, ominous and powerful and huge. And I went looking for one yesterday and just kind of keeping an eye right here on the Front Range. I just didn't see one. I appreciate those of you that did grab a few pictures of the clouds that were coming off the mountains for me yesterday. But that's basically what we got. Now, it is kind of interesting to look at this. We do have some snow already packing up into our mountains here, and I'm hoping that some of these longer-term model forecasts are right about western snowpack for this upcoming winter, and I hope they're wrong about the southwest side of it. We'll talk more about that at the end of this forecast video with what I still think the pattern might shape up to be. But there is one thing that I thought I would see differently, but then after I analyze it, I'm like, oh, no way. A lot of times when you have these very strong wind events coming over the mountains, as you come off the slope, you get what's called compressional or adiabatic warming. So the air descends the Front Range, and as it descends, the atmosphere compresses it. By compression, you get warming. And you can sometimes get the temperatures to jump 20, 30 degrees here. The issue is we had the strong winds, but we had a pair of cold fronts that were sweeping through that were working against the adiabatic compression. So we had just sourced air from the north near the surface that was really cooling things off, despite the winds coming off the mountains like they were. So you can see those two fronts. There's one here. There's actually one farther to the south, and there's the main front that extends up to the low that's going to be moving through the Great Lakes later today. So I guess what I would say is if we wanted to get that Chinook cloud, I think we would have more of a wind straight out of the west than the northwest in this particular setup. But there's our winds as they kind of look right now. And there's a couple of places on here we got to spend some time thinking about. As I zoom back out, we are still stacked up in the Pacific with low pressure systems, and these are going to continue to send a train of weather systems across the United States. We've got a little bit more clarity on what I think will be the big one that comes in this weekend in the Northwest, and the one that is closer to Halloween that runs through the midsection of the United States. In the meantime, we do have to talk a bit more about the tropical system. We'll come back to that in a second. But behind this front, we're actually cooling temperatures off quite a bit. I just wanted to point this out that the 24-hour temperature change here behind both of our low pressure systems, there's one there, of course, and one here, has really cooled things down. Whereas we've had some southerly winds returning, warming things up in the middle here. But with this cool down, we do have right now frost and freeze issues going on here in parts of the plains, but we're still not done with our high winds farther to the north later today. But we are expecting, just to kind of give you the latest update here, this is the newest forecast map from the National Digital Forecast Database, showing us where over the next week we are expecting to get a frost. It's kind of neat when you look at it because you can see the moderating effect of the Great Lakes. See that right around the edge? So lakes are still very warm this time of year comparatively, and so they have this effect on the downwind side. As you blow the air over the lake, it warms up considerably. Sometimes when you compare like Wisconsin to Michigan, either side of the Lake Michigan, you can find a 20 to 30 degree difference in certain situations throughout the year. So I just wanted to kind of point out that neat fact about this. But as it stands, we look out here, I want to just express, let's just refresh this, because the other reason I was a little bit late this morning is that the GFS, we had a model run failure, and I had to rerun everything, and I wanted to see if it was all going to work right. But take a look at the winds we are expecting. So there's our strong winds today. As we play this forward, just take a look. Note, here's Saturday. Look at the system coming into the west. big time winds along the coast into the interior. We got to be very aware of the Pacific Northwest wind field, and we're going to watch Montana for strong winds too. And then that system on the 27th, 28th, and 29th goes across the midsection of the United States, and this is the big storm system I'm thinking about for Halloween. And then we have a follow. Let me look at the next system coming in here, according to the GFS, and it's ripping through the mountains as well. So we are just finding ourselves moving into an extremely windy time period coming up. And you did notice there's something going on down here in the tropics we're going to have to make mention of here in a few moments. But I wanted to show you the setup, all right? So there's a few pieces at play. This is still the powerful jet extension that's going to trigger these next storm systems to finish out the month of October. Here's the deep trough that's leaving, going over the Great Lakes. This is one's got a lot of cool air on the backside of it. Here's our cutoff low. This low is just going to slowly move its way through here by Wednesday into Thursday, and then end up catching the base of a trough, riding it through the midsection of the country, developing all this good rain around the Ozarks that's forecast. And then finally we have this, which as of the time I'm recording, was just given, it's still 98L. In fact, let's just update this. I don't know if they've named it yet. Nope, still 98L. They've given it a 100% chance of developing, the National Hurricane Center has. And as we look at it, it would get the name Melissa should it become a named system. But most of the model forecasts, if you look at the blend between some of our biggest models here, are taking what's developing in the Caribbean and likely turning it north. Now that would be my assessment as to where the most likely path is going to be at some point over the next 7 or 8 days. I think the system comes in and does this. I think there's a lower probability of it getting over towards Central America. Now, that's just my own personal thoughts on this, but I'm basing it almost entirely on the depth of these waves coming through around and after October 28th. So I will play this all the way out for you just to show you what the ensemble members are doing. And at this stage, only one of the, gosh, I don't know how many he has in total here. If we used all of these, we're probably looking at over 100, easily over 100 ensemble members. Just one has it coming into the southeastern United States. If you have a look, though, I think the main feature that's going to be controlling where this goes, all right, here's the low that's exiting right now. It's going to go through the Great Lakes and exit the northeast. The GFS quickly brings us farther to the north, and as a result of doing that, it stays way out ahead of this trough. This is the big one that's coming through on the 28th and 29th. And as a result, there's just going to be a lot of push in the atmosphere to take whatever this is in that direction. So watch the GFS. It just shoots it way out. There's other things to this. It's not just this trough. There's a lot of reasons. The Bermuda High, the steering currents that are just pushing this. And it appears that it's going to be a big wind system for parts of Great Britain and Europe. I mean, you can see where it ends up here by the time we get to October 30th. Now, the European model, when you look at its ensembles, has a little bit different solution. It still brings it lingering through the Caribbean and then eventually to the north. But the important thing I said there is that it lingers. And the lingering may allow it to phase better with another feature coming through the jet stream. All right, let's go have a quick look at that. I'm going to show you these maps from WeatherBell, which they show what's called member-wise minimum pressure. So this is the ensemble. There's 51 members. And so you're going to be able to see where each each ensemble member is putting down low pressure. So behind the system that's going to be going through the Great Lakes today, tomorrow, into the northeast, we do have high pressure coming in. That's the colder air. And what's interesting is there seems to be some interaction with that and the fact that the low may linger in the Caribbean for longer. Now, as we get out there toward the 27th, 28th, and 29th, some of the ensemble members just rip this out and get it going quickly. Some of them linger in this area. And what I'm concerned about is that's when we have the big low coming through the Great Lakes region. And if these two things get close to one another, you'll get that, well, one could pull the other one around. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you can see as we get out there toward the 31st, you see how there's an interaction. I'm talking about this and this. There's an interaction between these two low pressure systems, one tropical and one extratropical. And I'll be honest, the European model has so much spread in the potential outcome. I mean, do you realize that all of this is where the model is currently thinking 10 days from now what could be named Melissa could still be lingering in the Caribbean or almost to Europe. So that kind of spread is why there's so much, there's just a lack of confidence in where this particular system might go. But I do want to show you this. There's our low that's leaving the Great Lakes today, tomorrow. There's the cutoff that comes through California. We'll look at total precip from that in a second. That is the cutoff that makes it into Texas and Oklahoma that spreads the rains in and around the Ozarks. Here's our deep low that's going to kick off the system on the 27th. There it is. And then eventually into the 28th. Now at that point, if you look, there's one. There's our tropical wave. And if we just pay attention on the 29th and 30th, as that low just deepens throughout the, from the Midwest into the, over toward the Appalachian Mountains, you do notice that there's almost like a phasing. So this wave gets absorbed into the broader wave to its north. And that will be interesting to assess, as will, on Friday, the 31st, how far to the east does this wave make it? Is it still lingering over the Ohio Valley? Is it all the way into the Mid-Atlantic Northeast? We'll kind of compare models to see what we can see there, all right? So let's just get back to where we are now, and let's play this forward by looking at the exact model solutions. Radar animation through early this morning. One system exiting northeast. The next low coming through the Great Lakes. It actually pushed some rain through Iowa, clipped parts of Wisconsin, northern Illinois. It then moved the front through Indiana and Ohio and Michigan. You can see right here, bringing more rain into that one little spot that was missed. But take note of this little fine line. That is the cold front we talked about at the beginning of this video, diving through parts of Texas. Kind of neat to see that. All right, picking it up with the high-res NAM, let's just play out the simulated radar. So we do expect to see showers, possibly some storms getting initiated right in tight to where the big Vort maximum is with this. But the main frontal boundary is way out here. We're going to watch that go over the Appalachian Mountains toward the Mid-Atlantic and initiate more rain into Quebec, Ontario, eastern Great Lakes, and the Northeast. By the time I get into Wednesday night, did you see over here in the west? This is the cutoff low that comes through California. Not nearly the rainmaker that the previous one was, but that is going to be the system that comes through the Four Corners early in the morning on Thursday and then emerges into the plains. But the NAM runs out 60 hours, so we're out here at 1 o'clock on Thursday. I want to look at the GFS versus Euro to kind of see where this goes. So let's get you out there to that point. Here we go. So watching two things. This is the lead little wave. There's the deep one coming into the northwest. That's Friday, 7 a.m. As we play this forward, you can now also see what the GFS is doing with the tropical system. It's already here. It's nowhere to be found in the European. So through this weekend, this corridor is setting up wet, but take note of how much farther to the south the European is on the precip. European also brings in the next wave, as does the GFS, and that's the one we're going to watch move into the central part of the United States. Where are we? This is Monday, October 27th. Getting into the 28th. Now, models diverge significantly. Take note of how deep the wave becomes here in the European model. This is only a week away versus the GFS, which does have a secondary wave down here, but has a primary one to the north. So see how they're connected? You can see two of them here. And that is the more dominant wave. So you're looking at the models and comparing them. Look at the difference if you're in the upper Midwest Great Lakes. And so that's what's going to be the most important thing, because this front is already, pushing through the east with the tropical system gone, right? We talked about that with the GFS. This case, though, the wave dips deeper, and here comes the tropical system. And the European model 10 days from now is trying to get them to hang out a little bit together. And I don't know which, I can't tell you which solution is going to be right. I can meteorologically make sense of both, because the models are going to be consistent with their own, forecast. So I'm just telling you there's uncertainty and we're going to have to wait. But it is going to matter the depth of the wave. Does it stay north or does it dig south? The European digs it south. I think that's going to be a story we'll watch all week. Regardless of that, just take a look at our 5-panel spread here of the rainfall over the next week. And what I'm really thinking a lot about, let's just open this one and have a look at the WPC. And we're talking about quite a bit of moisture getting into the Ozarks and surrounding states. Same thing for the Pacific Northwest, Northern California. We know that there's going to be some snow pretty far to the north. Also take note with the system that's coming out. Remember, only goes out to next Tuesday. We're going to be watching for better moisture coming through the Midwest and plains too. Can we fill in this hole is the kind of question that I'm thinking about. Same thing with parts of Texas. So probability-wise over the next week, this is the 0Z run. Best chance at getting an inch. I'd say the biggest difference is that we saw the probabilities sink south with the wave. So in other words, they're no longer as high as they were on the northern edge of this. Okay. Now, going out there to that system on the 28th, let's just zoom in and have a look right here. This is going to be a pretty deep low, and there's a robust solution for this low coming through this area and eventually settling over the Great Lakes and Northeast. And it will drop the temperatures, but its interaction with whatever is coming out of the Caribbean is still not understood. I just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. But that's one of the reasons why the week 2, because that's, of course, next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is showing this area. You can see it in all 3 of our models. That's the AI model in the middle, and there's the GFS over there on the right. They're all looking very similar with having a system in place going across the eastern part of the United States as we approach, Halloween. And if we just blow up the euro as an example, take note that as we get fully into week 2, we do see more drier conditions building into the south. Just want to keep note and track of this and watch to see if this system can actually drag a front through the southeast to revive some precipitation there. I do want to quickly show you Western U.S. snowpack forecast over the next 10 days with the deep lows that are coming into the west. The Cascades and the Northern Rockies are going to be taking the brunt of it. But remember, the jet extensions coming through the Gulf of Alaska. That's why British Columbia's coastal ranges are seeing the most snow out of this. And the snow you see here, some of this is coming from the weak little cutoff that's going to go right like this over the next 48 to 60 hours. Okay. Just an update. This is how things are shaping up for the month of November. The only difference, I think, between the previous run and this run is that we saw the models go a little bit drier back into this sector. And that's but the only change from yesterday. So I think the northern tier of the country has the more active storm track, but without the development of a subtropical jet, I'm worried as we approach the true cold season, getting into December, that if we don't develop that, we have an issue to be thinking about. The National Weather Service is, of course, thinking about this as well. So this is their new seasonal drought outlook, and I've showed it to you before, but let's just look at it again. And this goes through January. And to be honest, this part of the cotton belt here showing up with these dry signals in the longer range model forecast, which we looked at yesterday, and we know that without an El Nino, it's very hard to build in a big subtropical push here, that we do have the risk going forward. Now, I said that last year too. We had a La Niña, and it didn't manifest itself in that way. We actually got moisture. In fact, we had snow down here in the middle of winter. But with the current La Niña, we're going to use historical precedent here. And what it would suggest is that when you have a La Niña building, all right, we do have to be concerned of this. So this is a map looking at zonal winds. So wherever you see the warmer colors, this is a stronger wind out of the west. The bluer colors is a weaker wind out of the west when there is an El Nino. Okay? So what does that mean? The jet stream in El Nino years tends to leave Japan, join up with the Pineapple Express, and rip across the country with more of a southern tier type trajectory. That is actually why during El Nino winters we tend to forecast most of the United States mild, because we have a strong subtropical jet. We have a weak polar jet. That's what this means. Weaker west to east flow coming out of the Bering Sea, the Chukchi Sea, the Gulf of Alaska, and into the central U.S. Now, if you were in a La Nina year, blue means fast. So the jet likes to target us like that. And there is no strong flow here or here, which is why all of these seasonal predictions are saying dryness across the south and drought relief in the northwest and drought relief in the Ohio Valley and Mississippi Valley. It's all about the angle of attack of the jet, like that, leaving like this, or like this, coming through. And that's the difference. That's the primary difference for North American winters with El Nino and La Nina. Okay? So the CPC updated their forecast. We saw this last week, but I want to show it to you again. Do you note that their January through March has access to cold air? Why? Because the flow is coming out of the north. We're going to tap into that Western Canada cold. They're mild across the south. We then see it's dry across the south. But the jet entering here and exiting there sets up these two corridors as the most active. So that is why these forecasts look the way they do. Now, I've said it 1,000 times. The subseasonal factors will wash this entirely out. But the broader overarching pattern could fall into this should La Niña be the most dominant thing. Now, I've almost forgot to tell you about temperatures, but since I just showed you a temperature map, let's go look at the near-term temps. You can find the front later today. It's already plowed through the Midwest. Then you get into tomorrow, that cold air moves into the Northeast. There's one spot that's consistent in this whole forecast, and it's Texas. You just tend to stay mild. And if we look, this is next Sunday, Monday, and this is when the big low is working its way through. It's going to get here and start to work its way east as we approach Halloween. If you want to see what the artificial intelligence forecast model is doing for temperatures, this is just every 6 hours. I'm going to take you out there to this weekend. This is Sunday, getting into Monday and Tuesday. Now look, as we start this up, look at the extent of the cold air this big low coming through on the 27th, 28th, and 29th is going to have behind it. The AI model is showing a nice push of cold air all the way down to Kansas City, and temperatures in the 20s behind it. And this is that's Friday morning on October 31st, according to the AI model. And that's going to be, that's 7 p.m. So we could have some cool and windy conditions, and I'll be figuring out where the rainfall is going to be with this on Halloween night. So we'll just keep an eye on that, because I know I got a lot of kids that watch this video. All right, last thing, temperatures going forward, no changes really. We just noticed that to start November, we do have access to better cold air across this part of the country. Just want to make that point. It's been showing up consistently in the models, so I wanted you to see it. Last thing I want to cover today is South America. The last 7 days, as I mentioned, forecasts were drier, but there's still rain, even though it is drier. If you look at the satellite estimated rainfall, you can clearly see there's been active convection in through this area. That is more monsoonal-like. But there's no denying that the forecast has blew this up a little bit. The European model for the next 10 days is drier. No, 14 days, excuse me. It's much wetter in Santa Fe, Cordoba, over toward Buenos Aires, including Uruguay as well. And the GFS forecast, it's quite similar, but it's much more expansive on the drier risks. But remember, this is about 50% of normal precipitation. And because we're in a tropical climate zone here, 50% of a heavy rainfall amount is still a lot of rain. And so we're going to continue to monitor this to see if this is something that is stuck in the pattern, if the MJO's breakout could actually move this around or not, which I think we're going to continue to just highlight and think about this week. In fact, Matt, I think, is going to pick up with that tomorrow. But we're going to try to put together a better picture for what I think is going on in South America, as I know a lot of you are watching it. All right, that's all I've got for you today. And I look forward to talking to you again. I'll meet up with you on Friday. Matt's going to take the next couple of days, and we'll chat soon. Thanks.